many other...
This is right, Arab.
Hello and welcome to this Friday edition of WION Live Broadcast from London. I'm Ollie Barrett and I'll take you through a load of developing stories from all around the world. We will start with the headlines. The first civilian flight from Afghanistan since the evacuation deadline passed at the end of August arrives in Qatar. The US says the Taliban seemed businesslike and cooperative in the latest evacuations, which saw 200 foreigners, including many Americans, leave Afghanistan. India voices concern over a terror threat from Afghanistan at the United Nations. The Indian envoy underlines the need to ensure the Afghan territory should not be used to threaten or attack any country, shelter or train terrorists, or plan or finance terrorist acts. Until now, this man was only seen in criminal sketches and a mugshot from an FBI Most Wanted poster. WION brings you now the only known image of Sirajuddin Haqqani after he took charge as Afghanistan's new Interior Minister. Putin and Lukashenko announced the establishment of a unified gas and oil market following their meeting in Moscow. Both nations have formally opened joint military drills in the Baltic Sea. Vladimir Putin announces additional loans worth $640 million to Belarus. Hurricane Olaf weakens to a Category 1 storm as it sweeps through Mexico's Baja California peninsula and as the disaster-hit country recovers from a 7.1 magnitude earthquake and major flooding. And the fifth test between England and India in Manchester is cancelled, apparently due to a COVID-19 outbreak within the Indian camp. The Indian board's offering to reschedule the test at a later date. After a chaotic US and NATO-led departure from Afghanistan, the Taliban has formed a cabinet which critics say is far from inclusive. And the newly formed government is taking further steps to cement its grip on the country. According to reports, the Taliban are set to hold an oath-taking ceremony on the 11th of September. That is, of course, the day which marks the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks in 2001. The government's already rolled out invitations to various countries to be part of the oath-taking ceremony. The nations include China, Turkey, Pakistan, Iran and Qatar. However, there are conflicting reports. There are also some that suggest there might be no oath-taking ceremony after all. The Taliban says it's already established relationships with neighbouring countries, including China. They're calling on other countries to reopen their embassies in the war-torn nation. However, most of the international community is still not ready to recognise the interim government. That's because of claims of a lack of inclusivity for certain sections of society and the presence of Taliban old guard, some of whom are listed as proscribed terrorists by the United Nations and the United States. Washington has said the cabinet does not reflect what the international community and the US had hoped to see. However, Washington does concede the Taliban was businesslike and cooperative in recent evacuations, which saw 200 foreigners, including many Americans, leave Afghanistan. The Taliban, meanwhile, have lashed out at the international criticism against members of their interim setup, especially so against the United States, who they say are violating the Doha peace agreement by not recognising the interim government. Now, if an oath-taking ceremony does take place, there would be a number of questions that would arise from that, including, have the terrorists won? after 20 years of US-led war. Another is the date and timing of the Taliban ceremony a message to the United States? And will the nations invited for the ceremony move towards recognising the Taliban government? OK, well, we can go now to WION correspondent Anas Malik, who has been reporting tirelessly from Afghanistan, joining us live from Kabul. Anas, what is the latest you're hearing on all of that from the Taliban when it comes to the possible formation of the government tomorrow? Do you have any official word yet?
Well, Ollie, there is no official word as yet with regards to this government oath-taking ceremony. It is much talked about, but there is no official word from the Taliban. In fact, the Taliban sources that I have been speaking to, they are saying that there might not just be any oath-taking ceremony at all for two reasons. One, the group wants to be seen as somewhat has been changed, and they don't want to be symbolized, or they don't want to be seen symbolizing the date of 9/11 with their oath-taking, number one. And number two, the fact that there are increased security concerns within the capital city of Kabul. We understand that there is a threat alert, there is an active threat alert for tomorrow that has been issued. In fact, Taliban men or people from the Taliban have been advising journalists as well to avoid crowded markets for tomorrow, for Saturday specifically, for the fear that there can possibly be any untoward incident. There are reports, however, that there can possibly be some oath-taking ceremony, some sort of ceremony that can be oath-taking. But diplomatic sources and sources within the Taliban both have been denying that as well. And they have been contesting these reports because remember, on Tuesday when the government was announced, we tried asking that to Zabiullah Mujahid, and he did not respond on that. But after that, we saw that the very next day many ministers had gone to their ministry and taken charge. So therefore that gives the impression that there might just not be any oath-taking ceremony, contrary to what has been reported in a section of the press. Ollie?
OK, Anas. Well, on a related note, the United States has been describing the Taliban as businesslike and professional in this latest round of evacuations. Commercial flights resuming as well. How long before we might see more normalcy at Kabul airport? And is that even fully possible?
Well, you rightly mentioned, we saw that statement coming in from the United States. It's a contested claim on that as well. The Qataris and Taliban both say that this is a commercial flight, whereas by all means this flight that is off the Qatar Airways, it more looks like a chartered flight. Yes, there are tickets. Yes, there are people who are going with boarding passes. Yes, there is an immigration that they have to go through. But essentially the flight that is coming in from Doha is bringing in about 25 tons of relief items on everyday basis, and then the flight back, which lands here with relief goods, it takes back those foreign nationals who are willing to leave. So that's a very contested claim. But on the matter of the airport, on how soon can we see normalcy, it will take another week or so, probably lesser. We spoke to the Qatari technical engineers yesterday at the airport. Currently, the bigger problem is with regards to the functionality of the air traffic control and the radars as well. The radars are currently functional at the Kabul airport till about 70 nautical miles. They don't entirely cover the entire Afghanistan airspace. So therefore, for the time being, Pakistan and Qatar have established an air bridge for the time being, so to facilitate flights coming into Afghanistan. So if a flight is coming from abroad, they have to get into Pakistani airspace, get connected to the Pakistani air traffic control, and then there is an overlapping airspace between Pakistan and Afghanistan, and then they're made to land over there. So this whole situation can take another week or so, probably lesser, as what the Qatari engineers tell us on ground, till when normalcy returns. And then perhaps sometime after the 15th of September, after the mid of this month, we probably see flight operations going to what they say, international flight operations to what they say, resuming back to normalcy. Ollie?
OK, Anas, thank you very much indeed. Anas Malik reporting from Kabul for WION. The United Nations is stepping up efforts to resolve the implications of the Afghanistan crisis. It's already convened numerous sessions with international stakeholders. The latest saw the UN Security Council holding a quarterly debate on the situation in Afghanistan. Threats from terror outfits loom large for countries which neighbour Afghanistan. India is one such nation, and it's called for international coordination on anti-terrorism operations in Afghanistan. India's permanent representative to the United Nations, T.S. Tirumurti, has raised collective concerns, in particular on terrorism.
Afghan territory should not be used to threaten or attack any country, or to shelter or train terrorists, or to plan or to finance terrorist acts. As witnessed from the deplorable terrorist attack at Kabul airport last month, terrorism continues to pose a serious threat to Afghanistan. It is therefore important that commitments made in this regard are respected and adhered to.
India has asked for safe passage for all those wanting to leave Afghanistan. Emphasising the concern for the rights of women in the region, Tirumurti has asked for the formation of an inclusive, broad and equally representative cabinet. He says infrastructure projects led by India in Afghanistan should help in contributing towards progressive and inclusive polity. Similar concerns have been echoed by the Russian envoy to India, Nikola Kudashev. He says there is a danger of the spread of terror into the Kashmir region. Both Russia and India have insisted they do not want Afghan soil becoming a source of terror for other countries in the region. The first commercial flight carrying civilians departed from Kabul on Thursday. The development signals the airport has started to return to something approaching normality. That comes days after the United States concluded its troop withdrawal from Afghanistan.
The first international commercial flight since the end of the chaotic Western airlift from Afghanistan and the withdrawal of U.S. troops departed from Kabul airport on Thursday. Al Jazeera television reported that a large group of foreigners were aboard the Doha-bound flight. A U.S. official had said earlier that 200 foreigners in Afghanistan, Americans among them, were set to depart on charter flights from Kabul on Thursday after the new Taliban government agreed to their evacuation. Although international flights have gone in and out with officials, technicians, and aid, this was the first civilian flight since the evacuation that followed the Taliban's takeover of the capital on August 15th, as foreign military forces pulled out. Qatar's foreign minister thanked the Taliban for helping reopen the airport. Qatari and Turkish technical teams had also worked to restore operations at the airport. It marked an important step in the Islamist militant group's efforts to bring some kind of normalcy back to the country, which is facing economic collapse and a humanitarian crisis. On Wednesday, White House spokeswoman Jen Psaki said about 100 U.S. citizens were still in Afghanistan, but that not all necessarily wanted to leave now, adding that some may have family in the country or have other reasons for not departing yet. Thursday's flight came 2 days after the Taliban announced an interim government made up of mainly ethnic Pashtun men, including Islamist hardliners and some wanted by the United States on terrorism charges.
Russian President Vladimir Putin and Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko continue their public displays of cooperation. The two leaders met for the fourth time this year in Russia. They agreed on a range of economic policies at a time when the two ex-Soviet nations are looking to merge their energy markets. However, some more political discussions were off the table.
Russian President Vladimir Putin met his Belarusian counterpart Alexander Lukashenko. The high-level talks are held to boost bilateral ties between the two countries. The two leaders agreed on a range of economic policies aimed at integrating the two ex-Soviet countries closely. They agreed on 28 programs, but stopped short of discussing political integration. The agreements are part of the implementation of a 1999 union state. The agreement foresees the creation of a single parliament, single currency, and common state symbols. This was the fourth meeting between the two leaders in a year. Putin and Lukashenko announced setting up of a unified gas and oil market. Meanwhile, Putin has announced an additional loan of nearly $640 million to Belarus. Russia will continue to supply natural gas to Belarus till the end of next year. This comes as both countries gradually merge their energy markets.
After long discussions, we managed to find a mutually acceptable approach to the gas issue. The gas price for 2022 will stay on the level of this year. The document on establishment of a single gas market within the Union state will be signed before December 1, 2023. We are obligated to put the red flag on the electricity account. Why? Because there is no more water in the hydroelectric plants and they are producing less.
The meeting comes at a time when the armed forces of the two countries began joint war games, involving about 200,000 troops. The joint exercises will include 80 aircraft and over 50 military vessels. Moscow has stepped up its military presence in Belarus. Authorities have deployed fighter jets for joint patrols of airspace along its borders. The Kremlin has proved to be a vital ally for Belarus. Remember, relations between Belarus and the West have hit a rock bottom. The West has imposed sanctions on Minsk over a violent crackdown on protesters and opposition leaders following last year's presidential election. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Almost 14,000 migrants, many of them Haitian, are awaiting their chance to enter Panama and continue their journey to the United States. They remain bottlenecked in a Colombian beach town. It's an unfolding migrant crisis thousands of miles away from the US-Mexico border.
Thousands of miles from the US-Mexico border to the south, another border crisis is unfolding. Throngs of mostly Haitian migrants in the Colombian beach town of Necoclí are causing a major bottleneck awaiting their turn to enter Panama and continue their journey to the U.S. Mayor Jorge Tobon Castro says new arrivals have pushed the town to the brink.
Today, we are experiencing another crisis due to the holding up of more than 14,000 migrants that we have in the municipality of Necoclí because more than 1,000 or 1,200 migrants arrive in Necoclí daily, and we can only dispatch 500 on the boats.
The majority of the migrants moving through Necoclí are Haitian or Cuban. Others come from African nations like Ghana and Mali. The lifting of COVID-19 border closures sent the number of migrants soaring, with the foreign ministers of Colombia and Panama agreeing last month that 650 migrants could initially cross per day, with the quota gradually falling to 500. But each day, more than double that number arrive, often camping on the beach waiting their turn for boat transport. Many of the migrants told stories of being robbed or otherwise abused during their journey and said the wait was expensive and stressful.
Here, life is really hard because everything is going up. Food, paying for accommodation, and I am traveling with 4. It is difficult. I really didn't come here to stay. I want to cross, but it's difficult to buy a ticket.
From the coast of Colombia, these migrants hope to cross the Gulf of Urabá toward the jungles of Panama, where smugglers guide groups on foot through one of the most treacherous stretches on the clandestine route to the United States.
Hurricane Olaf weakened to a Category 1 storm as it swept through Mexico's Baja California peninsula. Authorities have activated shelters and have closed ports as well, asking people to monitor and follow the public announcements. This as the US National Hurricane Center said the area could see hurricane-force wind and rain by early evening or tonight.
Pues es como viene la proyección. Ya estamos prácticamente en un alertamiento rojo en lo que viene siendo el semáforo del sistema de alertamiento temprano. Ya se activaron lo que son los refugios, ya se activó todo lo que es el Consejo Municipal, el Consejo Estatal de Protección Civil. Estamos ya haciendo los trabajos pertinentes.
Ports in the region have been shut to vessel traffic, businesses have boarded up their windows, and the public have been making a beeline for supermarkets for last-minute purchases. Currently, there are around 20,000 foreign tourists in the region who've been asked to shelter in their hotels. 37 domestic and international flights were cancelled. Authorities patrolled through the flood-prone neighbourhoods to urge residents to move to shelters.
De estos huéspedes tenemos alrededor del 70% americano, de procedente de Estados Unidos, y el 30% nacional. Estamos también en total comunicación con el aeropuerto internacional de San José del Cabo, quien nos está monitoreando la cancelación de los vuelos. Ahorita el aeropuerto está operando de manera normal.
It was predicted that Olaf could strengthen further before reaching the coast. It was expected to bring in about 5 to 10 inches of rain to the southern part of the peninsula, with up to 15 inches in isolated spots, creating the danger of flash floods and mudslides. The fifth test between England and India at Old Trafford in Manchester has been postponed indefinitely after an outbreak of COVID-19 within the Indian camp. The cricket boards of both countries will attempt to reschedule the match at a later date. India lead the series 2-1 and were eyeing a first series win in England since 2007. However, doubts around the test began to swirl after a member of India's support staff, a physiotherapist, tested positive for COVID-19 on Thursday, which forced India's pre-match training session to be cancelled. The entire touring party underwent a further round of COVID-19 testing, and all players returned negative results on Thursday evening, and the match was cleared to go ahead. However, more than one member of the playing group expressed reservations about playing the match, with the physio having treated multiple players over the last few days. The ECB has released a statement saying there were fears of a further increase of cases within the Indian team, which is already within a bio-bubble. The ECB reversed an initial statement suggesting India had forfeited the test, and as things stand, the series is understood to be suspended. India's head coach Ravi Shastri, bowling coach Bharat Arun and fielding coach R. Sridhar tested positive for COVID-19 during the fourth test in London and did not travel with the team. The possibility of pushing the match back by a few days didn't arise because of the lucrative Indian Premier League T20 tournament, which is set to begin on September the 19th in the UAE. Indeed, some in the English cricket media have wondered whether the looming start of the IPL may have contributed to the final test's demise. And with that, we will call it a wrap on this edition of WION Live Broadcast from London. I'm Ollie Barrett, signing off for the week. I'll be back with you on Monday. Do join me then. In the meantime, for more news and updates, stay tuned to WION World is One.
This is right, Arab.